Hello, everybody. Welcome to Yield CloudRadial product update. Let me share my screen so I can actually have something up except for my pretty mug. All right. And a quick check with Safi, who is also on with me. Can you hear me okay, Safi?
Yes, you're
Nice.
doing fine.
Okay.
I'd give it a minute or so because I can see that people are cruising in, the participants.
Absolutely.
So,
No worries.
but it's also recorded. So
I always do that. Anyone who's ever worked with me knows I always show up anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes late on every meeting. So I try to give the same courtesy to everyone else.
all right, I'm signing off so you don't have all my background noise.
Makes sense?
But I'm here.
Okey-doke. All right, so we'll give people a sec to roll in. I guess we can get started with the more boring stuff, which is we're looking at the July 2021 product update. I, of course, am Ricky Cechinni, the Director of Product Service here, working directly underneath Jeff Ferris, CEO, et al., all the other people doing it too. So I wanted to get together and kind of run this one, show you guys what we've been working on. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I think between coming out of COVID, just getting busier, we've like fallen behind on it, but we're looking to get back on. You'll see at the end too, we're going to try to keep these monthly like we used to, try to show you guys what's going on behind the scenes, what we're working on, just hopefully be a little bit more transparent. So let's also go into some of the ways you can stay informed in the first place. Again, as we're growing as a company, we're starting to produce more in ways that are just harder to kind of work out and share with everybody. So there's a couple of different ways you can stay on top of it. Obviously, this webinar is a great way because that way you can hop on and see it live. We have radials.io/updates that will show you a little bit, right? Through support, we should be able to show as new processes, new things come out. We'll try to keep the KBs and all that stuff up to date, so our new processes are reflected in there. Obviously, the community is a really good one too because our existing partners are in there. They're going around and they're talking about best ways to handle stuff. Again, as new things come out, best to have the entire community behind you as far as backing up those ideas. And then we also have the academy, and the academy is always good for training and just understanding how to use stuff in general. But again, as new things come out, especially you'll see here in a moment, as we go on with some future stuff, we're going to be adding a lot more processes. Some things are going to change, so we're really going to keep that kind of front and center because that's going to be the best way to see how to do these things other than these webinars. Last one is the top banner question mark. Now, a lot of people either don't really know about this because it's a little bit buried, or they're just not familiar with what you can do. But actually, let me do this. If you look at the top of your tenant in your portal, there's a little question mark up here that says view help. And one of the things that you can do is you can click on that and see the announcements. And this will actually show you everything we've been working on, when we added it, and all that kind of stuff. So kind of helpful because it shows you exactly kind of the high level cuts. And again, usually with these webinars, what we try to do is we try to go in on them further. Anyone who's ever seen a CloudRadial webinar knows that we don't, I don't like to do PowerPoint for too long. I don't like to do it more than I have to. So we're going to run through this a little bit. I'm going to talk about stuff, and I'm probably going to bounce between this PowerPoint and then the live product to show you how stuff works. So let's get started. All right, so we're going to be covering quite a few things. Again, not all of these were released this month specifically. We're just using this as a cumulative wrap up for a lot of stuff, and just making sure that everyone's aware of what we got. So we're going to start with some SmileBack CSAT stuff, going on to the endpoint maps. The client branding number 3 is probably the star of the show. We've had a lot of people requesting something like that that is now here. A lot of applications for that. CERT management for websites is really nice for people that do any kind of, again, web management for their clients. Number 5 is also a really big one for anyone that uses the assessment module that wanted a little bit of a step up. Now we actually have the ability to submit tickets from there, which is really cool. We added a training report in the training section for students specifically. So now reporting on students is far more granular than it used to be. And then lastly, we launched a couple of different services to help people kind of get up and running and make sure they can deploy CloudRadial and use it in a good way. So let's take a look at the first one because I don't have too much to show, but let's get started there. So the SmileBack CSAT integration. And again, I'll be bouncing back and forth between this and then our actual demo account. So what happened with SmileBack and CSAT and stuff? So we have a built-in CSAT system. A lot of people use it. It's found under partner and feedback over here on the left-hand side. And generally speaking, what this thing does, right, is it enables you to do the typical, smiley faces. And locking that in, right? If you go to enable it, right, you can see me clicking on settings at the top. It's going to give you the templates to put into, depending on if you have a connected PSA, what to put in there. This demo account's connected to ConnectWise, but we have this for all supported PSAs. They're relevant little HTML code. So you can use our feedback directly within the portal. If you flip it on, right, it does the smiley faces, and then you could use this HTML template in your tickets and all that kind of stuff. And it's just built in, right? It's included. So the interesting thing with SmileBack now is because, or it kind of came about because a lot of people kind of have that sense of duality. They come into CloudRadial, they're experimenting with it. SmileBack being a dedicated CSAT tool just does some things kind of not better, right? Because that's what they do. So we were kind of figuring out like what's the hybrid. Again, we're not abandoning people that need a standalone CSAT system included. We wanted to be accommodating for people that are using SmileBack, so we kind of hybridized it. And we made it so with the integration, you can both use SmileBack or CloudRadial, and the results are cross-referenced. So that way, if you have like historic data or something, you don't necessarily have to ditch it if you don't want to, right? So the way that it works overall in general, I think if I Google, you'll see I have like a trillion of these CloudRadial SmileBack integration. It's actually on their site, and we're working through some stuff here. But generally speaking, the process is to build an API key on our side and feed it into SmileBack, and that'll secure it. So basically, that makes sure that our stuff gets sent over to them. And then the way that we bring in their stuff to us is through a webhook, or perhaps it's vice versa. But generally speaking, you can create a JSON webhook, and within that same feedback area I was showing you before, which is this area, where again is just the usual setup area of just copy this into your email templates. There's a section to further add notifications and whatnot, and here's where you can set up webhooks to fire off. So again, not necessary for anyone that's using CloudRadial in general. This is specifically an additional integration with SmileBack that's pretty cool. So again, gives you a little bit of options as far as using both tools if you like. So next one, and like I said, that was going to be kind of brief because I don't have too much access into SmileBack myself. We're going to talk about endpoint mapping. So this is a pretty neat little feature, right? It's not anything that's going to be particularly earth-shattering and going to change the way that you do things, but it's a nice one that we got a lot of requests for, because whenever you look at the endpoints in CloudRadial, right, off the bat, what our agent does is it pulls in information, and we've talked about this many different ways. Essentially, its point is to set up reports, build some kind of visibility between yourselves and the clients. So if you go to infrastructure and endpoints, right, this is typically what you would see as far as the computers in there. One of the things that our agent has always been able to do is to pull location data if it's being shared. And one of the things that employers, or not employers, your clients are seemingly wanting to do more and more is to be able to see kind of the sprawl of their managed endpoints. They want to see where people are and stuff like that, right? Not exactly Big Brother-ish where we're seeing their address or anything like that, but we're looking on the right-hand side. You can see there's a little map, and I can see more or less where people are spread out. And again, this kind of came about because with the resurgence of this, work from home thing, I don't think it's going anywhere, even with COVID kind of ramping down. We still like to have stuff like this where they can see exactly where people are located, right? If you're working remote and stuff, checking in, and it can show them that, as an IT provider, you're managing a giant sprawl of people all over the place. You're not going to see all that many endpoints in here because a lot of these are fake, but this thing does reflect them overall, which is kind of neat. So again, not too huge. Same thing, right? When you go to infrastructure and endpoints, there's a little option on the right-hand side that says map. If you flip that on, that's how we're seeing those. All right, so next one up here, we're going to talk about client branding. Now, this is one of the big ones. So as a context for this, right, we've always had this request from people, and we've always had this kind of understanding that people want to deliver a client portal, obviously. But what ends up happening a lot is that you get the request from your clients to really take it to the next level and make it their own, right? And we've had something in the past that would like kind of speak to that. It was kind of like, we could make do in that you can customize your URL within CloudRadial, right? Your tenant, I believe, starts off with, the partner name, demo.region name, us.cloudradial.com, right? And you can get a custom domain on top of that. So a lot of people did, like portal.demoaccount.com, and that was all well and good. But again, we're talking about a step past that. We're talking about if you wanted to get your big client Acme Co. and give them their own portal, you kind of were left with an option to say like, well, I guess I could get another thing, another custom domain, acmeco.ua or portal.acmeco, and that was kind of just a little bit difficult. So we've revamped the way that we did that because that would still lead to some additional problems in that they would land on the same portal splash page as you. Again, we took all that and scrapped it. So now the way that we have it is for individual clients, as we'll see in a second, we can basically create an entire override specifically for them. So that includes their own theming. So if they need to have different sidebar and title bar colors than the main, corporate branded stuff, you totally can. You can inject their own logos in there so yours no longer show. You can change their email settings of stuff. That includes like data locale, I think the sending domain for the email as well, and create a company URL directly within here so you don't have to request it from us anymore. You can literally spin it up and go. And then you can also change their login options based off what they use. So it's very powerful, again, especially compared to what we used to have. So let's take a look at how that works real quick. So like I said before, what we're looking at traditionally and off the bat for most people, especially if you've just spun out CloudRadio, you're going to see just like my demo account has demo.us.cloudradial.com, right? That's just the way it works. Now, like I was saying, typically what we used to do is you'd go to partner and account over here. There's a spot for your domains, and especially when it comes to the custom domain, you would go in here, you would get your custom domain, you would point it to the relevant stuff, and it would kind of fire off. And this is still a recommended step. We still want you to do this for your own portal from like a global portal branding perspective. So what we're talking about now is the ability for individual companies within your portal that don't necessarily need to have that, and customizing the branding. Again, I want to be super clear here. Let's take a look at one that does not have this set up. So again, this is what you're traditionally going to see for like All Smiles Dental Clinic. The typical behavior is that once you set global branding for your tenant, for your entire portal, what's going to happen is when I go into another client like All Smiles here, I'll impersonate as admin. We're going to see that we have your logo, your global branding, same URL at the top. The only real difference here is that you have All Smiles Dental Clinic. Right now it shows them that it is their little portal, and obviously their relevant content will show up. And again, prior to this update that we're about to look at, the only real thing that you could do for them is either do kind of a CNAME mapping and figure out a workaround to get their URL different, but again, it would kind of put them in the same position. And then at most, the other thing that you could do is you were able previously to put an image. So previously there used to be a slot here to say, give me an image. And what that would do is it would actually put their logo in addition to yours, right? So it would show them kind of like side by side. So what we've done now, and we can take a look at, for example, Flight Central here, we've been able to take them, right? So we're going to take the company, we're going to go ahead and edit this company here, and you're going to see that there is a new tab when you set up companies here called branding with a little preview on it to show you that it's new. So when we hit that, you're basically going to have all of the same settings that you have at the global level, specifically for a company. So if you want to flip it on and you want to apply branding for them, what can you do? Well, again, theming wise, which is going to change their sidebar color, you can change it to, deviate from your global one. So let's say this one needed to be on the dark theme. And when you select a theme that's not the user set, which is every user picks their own, you have the ability also to specifically change their title bar color using a little hex editor and stuff too. Same spot as I was mentioning before, if you want to go ahead and drop their logos and stuff up top, you can. When we go down, like I mentioned before, if you have multi-region companies, right? CloudRadial didn't handle this so well before because we had the global tenant, the global currency code, the global everything that applied to everyone. Again, we're trying to be more flexible to both international clients and just people that have, various types of companies they support across the world. And then furthermore, like email settings, right? Again, sometimes these emails specifically come from stuff like approval emails or like the daily digest and stuff. So there are some emails that originate from CloudRadial that, again, for consistency's sake, you want those obviously to be branded to them, hence the additional email override. And lastly, this is what a lot of people want, is they want the ability to create the custom domain for the client so that they have nothing to do with, your demo portal or whatever. They go straight to their own. So the way that this works is it's going to be able to have a free reigning name, right? So typically this would be the company's name. In this case, it's Flight Central. It'll have a region code, and then we're using the URL directportal.com Now I've spoke to developers, and I think based off of the interest and usage here, we're probably going to go fetch some additional ones and work this out and evolve it. But for step number one of this kind of phase one of our branding experiment here, we wanted to get a pretty generic domain that was obviously very relevant and kind of separate from everything else. We picked this directportal.com. So really all you do is you type it in, it'll tell you if it's available or not, region code and direct portal, and you can just give that directly to that client and they'll have their own thing. Again, completely separate from yours. Lastly is if you do have a custom domain and they do now have a custom splash page when they first get into the portal, you're gonna have the option to change the name, change a couple of background images and stuff. And one of the other updates that we made available is the ability to disable or enable specific login options. Just the other day, I had a client of ours that has, generally speaking, they have the email login option, with a token, and they have Microsoft, and they don't support Google. They just got a Google client, and just for the sake of confusion, it'd be really bad to keep everything enabled. So what they did is they set up a custom branding, and they just disabled the Microsoft option. So that client now only has a Google login option, right? So that kind of flexibility is also there. Now, when you set all this stuff up, right, to whatever degree you want, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to easily tell which client has the branding set up, because when you look at your client list now, they're going to have a little um, line right here to say, hey, this one has a branded site, this one has a branded site. So when I click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to launch that specific URL, and you're going to see that this is quite different, right? So where this is Flight Central US Direct Portal, again, it still is completely under your tenancy. If I were to open up another demo, that CloudRadial, right? I should have done it in another in private window. You can see that it's going to be completely separate in general. So we'll do that just to hammer home the point, despite the fact that they are, the same exact portal. That keeps caching my credentials. I'm foolish, but you get the idea. The last thing I suppose that we should talk about with this in general is the way that it works currently is if I go into a client that doesn't yet have custom branding. So let's take my first example, All Smiles, and I'll go edit and go into branding. Is like I was mentioning earlier, when I have the ability to set that domain, right? I have it over here. If I run into somebody else that already has it, right, it'll show me valid or invalid over here. And there are small restrictions, right? There's a length restriction. I think it has to be more than 2 characters. Um, and if you match with someone else, right? So this is going to be an issue. We kind of know this with clients that have similar name, right? If it, God forbid, if 2 different tenants have like Flight Central.us.direct portal in 2 different companies, it'll cause an error. So we're kind of using the region codes to mitigate that, right? We can kind of work through a couple of different identifiers past that. And again, that's going to be the ultimate reason that we're going to get more and more domains so we can open up flexibility for it. But again, this is in preview or kind of a beta build. So we're still working on some tweaks to this, but again, this is really going to up the customer specific branding for it in the first place.
Hey, Ricky, I'm going to ask you a question. This is current now inside the portals, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Any company that uses CloudRadial, this is not on a beta thing of CloudRadial. This is out and live. It is a beta feature, but it's out for everyone. Okay, so obviously there's a lot to that, and there's a lot of ramifications for it. Again, I think as we evolve this, we might even bring this up in a future webinar. This is not one of those things that we're one and done with it. There's still some tweaks to be done, but I think a lot stronger now as far as presence, as far as presenting the portal. This has a lot of ramifications again for the way that you sell it, right? It's not now all of a sudden it's not just a portal you want them to get into. For those that are trying to either increase revenue or just increase adoption, a lot of people like to see their own stuff up there because when they do, they feel a better connection to it. So this is big for that, certainly. All right, next up.
Ricky, will you also go over, he wanted to know, I have a question where somebody wanted to know if we can use the client's domain like portal.flightcentral.com to redirect to this.
So that was the way you could do it before, and that
That's
was
what I
through
thought.
CNAME
Okay.
mapping. The issue with that method is not that you can't do it, but like, again, fundamentally what happened is because we manage the certificates and all that kind of stuff and we have to set it up, is we treat it the same way as if when you first set up your domain. Now, most people have control over their own domain, so they go into like their GoDaddy or whatever. They go into their editor and they're able to spin up that CNAME. So you have to do the same for them. You have to make sure you set the record to say portal.whatever. it's the same process. You would have to point it to your specific region code. And then that was the one that still to this day results in $100 one-time charge to do it, which is, it's fine for most people if they're wanting to get them to be like, portal.whatever.com. But the issue with that again is that all we've done really is we've pointed them to your same site. So they don't have a custom splash page or anything. So while you can do it, and you can make your global splash page kind of more generic, then we kind of prefer you do this new one. But yeah, you can certainly do that with the CNAME mapping.
And then there's a little bit of confusion on if the branding is cumulative. So if they choose to modify for a particular company that they use, A4, and that if the only, and that's the only setting change that you've made, does it go in and pick up the rest of the global brand settings, or do you have to go in and put them in?
So the way that it works is from the top level is under partner and settings at the very bottom, right? This is before we get into any of the stuff I just mentioned, which is partner specific one. There is the account and branding area at the top under setup. And I believe what happens here is the first thing that you want to do is you want to set your global one, and that'll set the tone for everybody, right? So like your global thing is, here you go. And then past that, yeah, it's all one by one. So it's not cumulative. It's every single client. If it has to be ticked on as a A4 or whatever. Does that make sense? Is that the wrong answer? Maybe.
No, that's good.
Okay. All right. And again, understandably, guys, since it's beta and it's only been out for, I think it's only been 2 weeks. It's one of the things that we always try to announce it on these things, to be like, hey, we're working on this, or we have it released. And again, it's not like an alpha where it's like in a private staging thing. You can play with this. So please, like any new feature that we have, usually the play is to play with it, break it, much to the developer's chagrin, and then just let us know, right? Let us know what you think we should do instead or better or anything like that, and we'll tighten it up. But again, I think personally, it's a good first attempt for sure at solving this problem of just clients are wanting more and more custom stuff. So take a look at it. All right, so the next thing is certificate management. This one's kind of interesting as well because we've gotten some requests from people that manage websites and domains and stuff. And one of the things that we didn't have previously is the ability to manage the expiration of these certificates. So when we go into infrastructure and domains, rather than again just tracking the domains specifically, we have the ability to now go to the certificates tab. You can add that guy in, right? And what it'll do is it'll do a lookup and pull the cert information and pull it in here. So this is more important for people that, again, are trying to stay on top of renewals, trying to use this as either revenue opportunity or just part of their management, right? That's just something they want to be able to showcase to the client and be able to kind of keep on top of. So other than just putting it up here and going, hey, neat, we have certificate management, take a look whenever. We've kind of added it to our usual flow of operations in the sense that, like, to make this actionable, we've added that as part of the compliance policies. So now we go to the compliance policies. There is a policy specifically listed here under, I believe it is application, or no, it's domain. Under domain, you can now do cert expiration and it'll let you know, right, your certificates are expired and all that kind of stuff. And I think what this says is it's going to allow you to choose how long before you can select it. So why this is important again is when you're trying to do a wrap up, you're trying to have a discussion with the client. Again, rather than having to run them through it and be like, oh yeah, that's expired. This can either be a little bit more proactive, right? Show you, hey, Red, we have a problem with that, all the way to generating like a ticket into the PSA if that thing goes expired. And I don't know if I have this set up in the demo account since this is fairly new as well, but I believe there's a dashboard element as well that is added for it. So if we look under the dashboards, there is, under infrastructure, there's certificates now, which will show you, you've got something expiring soon or in a little bit and stuff like that too. So again, just a little bit of further reporting to help drive home the point and make it a little bit more visual for the clients, right? Make it a little bit more actionable. So let's go into another really big one, which is tickets from assessments. So we've had this one on the map for a while, and it's something that, again, a lot of our specifically bigger process-driven organizations, partners are really looking into, because what was the issue before is that we have the assessment module under compliance, and it kind of has the same issue as cert management, right? it's one thing to have assessments in here. So for example, here is the NIST framework assessment that we typically use in this demo one. Here are several attempts that we've done. Let's just go to like an old one, like this December 8th one of last year. The idea was that, essentially you could run the assessment, you could go through, an assessor, kind of marks yes or no, or this needs additional stuff, and they put their notes. But then the problem that we had for a while was that once they were done with it, they could do a report, they could hand it off, they could show the client, but people were looking for just one more step of actionability, right? Being able to delegate that to someone and making sure it actually gets handled, right? So it's like, okay, we need to fix this flow of information or whatever. So really simple. If you look at the specific nitty gritty part of any given question, so let's just pick this one right here, flow of information controlled. We had the ability before, let me go ahead and edit this, to select not just the details of the question and the format and the risk stuff. This was always there. We also had the ability to select the routing. So kind of like our tickets, right? We could choose the board, the status, and again, depending on the PSA you have hooked up, you might see different options. But ultimately, the idea is to trigger something, right? To make this an actionable thing to say, we got to fix this, we got to fix this, we got to fix this. So what should happen off the bat is even your existing assessments should be pre-filled with your default board, default status, default priority tokens. If they're not, you can always go fill them with those, or I would recommend putting it into an Excel spreadsheet, re-uploading that, which we can talk about in a moment as well. But generally speaking, the result now is that when you run an assessment again, and you've kind of gone through and marked, this is flagged, this is good, this is bad, and you're going through and you're trying to develop the actionability. When you click on a specific one, there's now a button to say, hey, I want to submit a ticket, and it works out pretty slick. So basically what happens is it goes, hey, I want to submit it. Okay. Now this is going to get fired off again, in my case, to ConnectWise. So right there, 2185. It'll actually show that it's linked. So if I click on the ticket from within the assessment, it'll take me directly to the ticket area within CloudRadial, and it'll show me that it was submitted by me. Right, I have the details to what we're looking for. I have a link even back to the assessment specifically. So when I click on that, it takes me back to it. And that becomes like a nice little closed loop, right? So I have the ability to see it. Furthermore, when you run an assessment, you also have a little symbol to let you know that there's been a ticket submitted for that. So even if we're not compliant, right, now we have the ability to see, hey, yeah, we did open up a ticket on this 1281, right? We are tracking this, we're trying to fix stuff up. And where this really comes into play, I think, again, from a large level strategy, is when you have an assessment or a series of assessments that you're doing, kind of like this NIST one. It may not be the perfect example, but the idea is that you're assessing a client, and further over time, right, you're getting them better and better and better until there are no red spots left. You fixed them all up. It could be really nice to be able to point back and go, okay, we did this, we discovered this, we fixed this, right? It's basically all the tracking that you need is shared between the PSA and then CloudRadial, right? The history is right there. So ultimately, when you end up comparing the different runs, which this is again a demo account, so it's not a very good example. The idea is that you're able to see, like, yeah, over time we're growing, we're handling this, and you're able to show them the growth kind of tracked. So not a huge difference to most people, at least from a visual perspective. It's a button, a little symbol, but ramifications again for logistics, for usage of the entire thing, are huge, because again, now this has turned this into a far more actionable thing. So last note on this, right? Again, when you're running an assessment, it kind of splits into two possible things, right? Assessments, the whole point of them, other than just to generate, to-dos of stuff, is to show the client that, we want to handle certain things. And some of them are certainly valid by ticket, right? Some of them are just like, oh, you don't have a backup documentation. Let me open up a ticket. We got to do that anyways. Some of them, they're bigger than that, right? They're not really just like, oh, we opened up a ticket to build you a new backup system in general, right? That's a lot of work. That's a big project. So we always will give you the ability, and this is kind of up to your discretion, whether a specific item is worth submitting a ticket and that's just nipping it in the bud and being done, or whether that item is better suited for the planner, requires discussion, requires kind of a talk. And I bring this up, even though this is specifically, this update's about the ticketing thing, because I want you guys to be aware and be clever about how you use it, because again, some things are going to be planner based, right? We want to talk about it, and adding it to the planner behaves very similar to the ticket, in the sense that, like, we can link it to the planner, we can link it to a ticket, and that way we can show the client again contextually that this is a big thing. It requires a whole conversation as far as like the actual roadmap goes within our planner, and maybe that generates a ticket as well, right? But again, trying to make everything very clean and flow well in terms of order of operations. So let me.
Okay, so Ricky, I want to just be clear on this, and I think that I answered this right, but
Sure.
I had a question that somebody wanted to, does this automatically submit a ticket? And it does not.
Right.
It has to
It
be
does not.
manually. Yes, it has to be manually pushed as a
Now we've
ticket.
thought about that. That's a really good question, because I think this is where we get into not necessarily like a mistake or an oversight. This is just like a kind of an ongoing discussion, because we had the same thought, which is like, for a NIST assessment, for example, which this one has, I think it's 110 questions. You end up thinking that, right, where it's like, hey, should it open up a ticket for everything it finds non-compliant or just bad? And I think just logistically ignoring like whether we should or shouldn't, we also run into just sheer API overload sometimes, because what would end up happening is, like in this case, it would fire off 53 tickets at once immediately, and it would clog up the pipes, and probably the API would freak out. But irrespective of that, it's just like we kind of thought both the simplest thing logistically and just to not break stuff is to just leave it as that manual addition of great ticket. So yeah, that's correct, Safi. So let's keep on going. All right, so the next one. Okay, this one's an interesting one. And again, this came from kind of an interesting trend we've been seeing, in the sense that we have the LMS in CloudRadial. And for those that are familiar with it, it's relatively simplistic, but also not, right? For most people that need an LMS, or they need some kind of a training thing, they're looking for some of the core essentials, in the sense that they want courses up there. If you have course completion, that would be neat, right? If you have student tracking, if you see recommended, required, all that kind of stuff. So it's very strange. The way that we advertise it on our website and in general is we always talk about like, oh, LMS Lite and all that kind of stuff, which the training is. I think the only downside to this compared to like a standalone LMS system was well, I guess it's just really SCORM files. This thing is really meant to pull in files from anywhere. So whenever you create a new course, right, you go through, you write your description, you can always bring in videos and stuff from YouTube. There's a ways to embed a bunch of stuff and generally bring them in, right? So very powerful from what most people need. Again, considering LMS systems, standalone ones are typically prohibitively expensive. But one thing that we expanded on that a lot of people are wanting to do more and more is that we're seeing increased shared kind of a co-managed responsibility, where the MSP or the IT provider will go in and add a bunch of courses, right? Maybe they'll get some. And then we're seeing a resurgence in people that are wanting to use this for their own businesses, right? Especially, I talk to a lot of people that are running like OSHA stuff, and they're trying to do their OSHA training in here. And you can give the students the ability to take their own courses and do that. The issue with those things that we had before is that the training tracking, right, so who completed what, was there, but it was a little bit difficult. So what happened is, when you took the courses, whenever you went through, whenever you tagged them as required or whatever, yeah, you would have a little dashboard up here and it would show it, and you could pull up the specific ones that you needed. But again, as an administrator or an MSP, to track that and show the completion of the training, you would go to the compliance tab and the training sub tab, right? So what'll happen here is, and this didn't exist, right? You would only have the course. So basically you could view completion training by course. So I'd click on awkward at the office here. And then basically, if I had to find out if, let's say, Steven did it, right? I wouldn't know that. I'd have to click the course. I'd have to go find it. I have to do this, which is kind of a little bit tedious. So clever developers changed it up in a way that you can see it by course. But now we also have a students tab, which is really cool. So now I see all the students within that organization. When I click on a given person like Steven, not only am I seeing his completion, at a high level of how much he started overall or when he last completed it and whatnot, but I'm also going to be getting a breakdown of every single course he's taken, the required ones, the recommended ones, and so on and so forth. So when I look at it, right, I get the high level stats, again, the required ones, which is triggered by a flag in the course itself, will show you whether it's started, not completed, or in progress, and just generally, again, overall better reporting, which comes in very clutch whenever you have a bunch of uh, end users at companies that want to track and make sure that their students are actually completing their required courses, the OSHA stuff, this stuff, that stuff. So again, not too difficult from a UI perspective and learning a new thing. It's just be aware that now we have student tracking. So if you're trying to emphasize the LMS functionality and try to add that on as a feature, feel free to take the credit yourselves and show the clients that you guys added a new thing, which is pretty neat for reporting. And I believe, let's try this live as well. I actually haven't done this, so I'm taking a risk. The Excel file should also be pretty good as far as spitting out data. Good, yeah. So if you're trying to give it, this always depends. I always try to play with it, and I encourage you guys to, wherever you can see some of these files that you can download and grab. Always nice to play with them, because I know that we have some partners that like to build dashboards and just try to visualize some of this data using third-party stuff. And typically, with any kind of update like this where we add new data sets of information, you're going to see the download option. So just be aware that if you need to grab it and put it in some kind of report, you totally can. Let me keep going. Safi, any questions on this one? I'm like scared now because we have questions on everyone and I don't want to just keep rushing through it.
No, I'm answering somebody who, it'd be nice if we can specify which questions. I can't tell if he's talking about something inside the product or if he's complaining because I'm not answering them right in here. So trying to kind of flush that out. But I think we're okay. I might have one more. I'll just jump in if I see.
Yeah, just let me know. I don't want to get too far off. If someone's like has a question on assessments.
I'm going to answer this to the group, and then I don't know how this works, how Zoom works as compared to.
Yeah, that's also something we should put as a disclaimer. We just swapped over.
We're new to this today.
we swapped over from GoToWebinar to Zoom, so be patient with us as we try to figure out like practice mode and this and that. For the most part, it's pretty good. I mean, honestly, it's not bad, but yeah, we're still figuring it out. So past the student training report, we have two new things that we developed. This isn't strictly new for July, like I was saying before. It's just a new thing in general, in that we have a lot of people that are kind of in a strange spot, in the sense that like we offer free onboarding service, right? Whenever you first get CloudRadial, or if you're stuck, we've always had the ability to get with us and talk with someone that helps you, kind of points you in the right direction, gives you the link to the academy. They show you do this, do that, right? And they just kind of get you going right. But what we saw with a lot of people, excuse me, and we also had the extreme opposite of that. So we have a kind of a premium onboarding, which is like we kind of hold your hand the whole way through. We make sure that every single step is answered, and you have kind of like all that hand holding you need to just get it done. And what we were seeing a lot is that there was something in between there that we were kind of, again, kind of leaving out in the open, which is either people needed some kind of like, I get how to use it, but I need a little bit of like a push or help. And that's really how the jump start happened. And then the other one was getting new people up to speed, but not just like, hey, I want you to know what this is, like wanting them to manage it. So we spun up two different professional services kind of offerings, which you can see on our website. If you look, it is over yonder. We have them under our website and under resources, specifically as Bootcamp and Jumpstart. So like I said before, we only used to have the onboarding and the premium fast track, but the Bootcamp is kind of the place I would recommend most people that are looking to get other people up to speed. What this is a group session that takes your tenant, myself and the other people on the support and consulting team, basically have a checklist of things that are set to do. We follow a syllabus. So you basically go through and we cover specific things, everything from what is CloudRadial to how do you operate the very core functionality, all the way to how do you build a course, how do you run a QBR, how do you do this, how do you do that. So every single one comes with kind of some homework to do, right? We kind of actually take a look at your account, and we do, even though it is a group course you do with other people, we try to talk to you like, one-on-one. So it's like very small classes in that sense.
Yeah, and I kind of want to jump in here because I've sat in on this myself to listen to how this class, went. And this team does an exceptional job at getting people kind of ramped up, set up, and working in that small group and having a little bit of homework here and there. But they also are going back into the portals and making sure that you've set everything up right. And I want to be clear that we're not pressuring people to do these boot camps or Jumpstart, because we do give you a ton of free resources that if you're a self-starter, you're in a very good place with getting your portals out. But these two programs, especially this boot camp, is exceptional. I know the product pretty well, not as well as most of the staff, but I've learned just from sitting in there of different things. And as we add new features, Ricky has kind of gone over them inside the one that I sat in has gone over these features. And some people have bought, 2 or 3 years ago And we do have a lot of new stuff there. So this is a great, both programs, Bootcamp and Jumpstart, can also be used as refreshers. So that's all I wanted. I just kind of wanted to sing your praises, Ricky, and your teams.
Always
Because,
appreciate it.
yeah, because y'all done a really good job. So
Yeah.
sorry for the commercial break there, but I did, from somebody that's not as technical, these are great programs to put, maybe a new employee in. We had one yesterday that signed up, for Jumpstart, and we're just going basically with her and showing her the QBR automation, and how to do her QBRs. I mean, they've done a Jumpstart, so they can kind of horn in on what this person needs to be doing. But they're both very nice programs.
Yeah, and again, the key takeaway is this is not like a new thing that's like, hey, make sure everybody signs up for it. Again, it's just to help people that are kind of stuck in the middle that are getting the usage. The most common one that I see that we recommended, the whole reason we spun it up is basically because this is not like a one-time call where it's like, hey, here's an hour call and like, sign up for the academy. This is like 4 sessions, and it's really talking about, like Safi's saying, it's like getting you back up to speed, going, hey, lots changed. Let's see where you're at. Let's see what you need to happen to kind of move you along. So
well, and also in both programs, though, Ricky, is that you come out of it with your portal ready to go.
right.
And so, some people have, some of our clients were slower to deploy, got busy, and so when Ricky's finished, or or someone on his team is finished, depends on who you get as an instructor, you're finished. I mean, you've got a working, functioning portal that you're ready to deploy out.
Yeah, again, that comes down to like the scariness, and I get it. I mean, CloudRadial, much like any other complex tool, just has a lot of stuff to do. And I'll say the same thing for this boot camp session as it will for the jumpstart. Let's talk about that since we kind of mentioned it. It's the same concept. Jumpstart really is just dedicated to you. So it's instead of boot camp, which is 4 group sessions, Jumpstart is 4 one-on-one sessions, and obviously you can bring team members and stuff to that. But generally speaking, it's dedicated. And this one is more so than the other one because the boot camp, because it follows the syllabus, because it follows like a overall product update, or not product update, product like refresher product training, it's better for catch up. This one is for people, I see most of these people using it for, I get it, right? I understand fundamentally how to do it, but I have like, I'm switching over from another, ticketing solution. I have like 80 tickets to build, and like, I don't like, you guys could do it way faster than I could. I'm busy. Or I want to start using assessments, and I have all these assessments. Can you help me convert them into CloudRadial, put them up, and show me how to run them, right? So stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Safi's right. It's one of those things that is not necessary. It's not like you're going to do it, but it's one of those things too that like we're seeing a lot more people wanting to do this. It happens with any piece of software. You want to do it, and you almost like we're actually quite honest about it. We're pushing you on purpose to go like, ouch, there's a cost. Ouch, there's things, because we want you to be engaged and do it. Because again, a lot of people have good intentions, but until we go like, okay, you need a coach to do it, it's just hard to start.
Yeah, but it also gives you the control to decide if this is what you want to do.
Right.
I just had a question from someone that said, do we have any training for the customer? And we don't, like this, that, of course, that we put the customer through, or your company end users. But what you can do is, if you do the Jumpstart program, you're basically buying a block of time, like 4 hours. And we can kind of work on what you need us to work on. And we have had some customers where we have built customer training more in video form. And I think it's, we do it in Camtasia. And, we customize, an end user introduction to your portal, and also an introduction for your customer admins on how to use the portal.
That's always,
yeah.
I was going to say,
and
that's
I don't
always,
think we can template that, can we, Ricky? Because everybody sets their portals up differently.
That's what I was going to say. So like, I've always struggled with that question, because the gut instinct is that, yeah, that would make a lot of sense, because show it. So like, I've been talking to a couple partners and stuff about it in general. And one of the things that I've talked to people is they're like, and what Safi's talking about, I guess I'll give you some context there, is that like everyone's portal is different, and not so much like the logo's different, because we can kind of get away with that. More so like they chop up different sections of the feature set. They you can override the names of them. So sometimes it's weird. So the challenge has always been like, if I give you a video or something that's like, here's a minute long walkthrough, it could be different looking. So we tend to prefer to do, if we have to, like a little bit more of a customized thing where it's in your tenant or just in general, we at least know the ballpark of what you have available. But what I was talking to some other partners and they were saying like, well, short of that, maybe, and I'm thinking about producing this, is just like a little intro that just on the 4 sections, right? So at the very least, there's some kind of internet baseline. But that question is really important. It's always haunted me because I just don't know what the best way to do like a generic version that I could hand out to clients is. But if you've got an idea or suggestion, please let me know because again, like that's my gig to produce it. So please, uh, happy to. I just need to know kind of what would be the best middle ground that wouldn't have to be tweaked, or even this is a bit much of an ask, but when I deliver it to clients, like some kind of a format, like whatever's easiest for the general community to take and customize. Obviously, handing over like video editing files is always a bit tricky, but yeah, open to ideas for sure. There's no reason we don't do it other than it's just haven't found a good logistical way to do it. Yeah. All right. So I'm actually wrapping up on time, which is interesting. I thought I would be a lot faster here. The last bit I was going to mention before we say sayonara for today is just the last part, which is the upcoming webinars. So we have an upcoming webinar with Adigy, partner of ours, that is a Mac RMM. The link for that will be coming soon. And then we're going to be back on this cadence where we're going to try to be a little bit more consistent and transparent as stuff comes out. Again, just for the nature of our own growth at our company and our processes, the way that we've been doing stuff, we've been kind of releasing it a little bit hidden. We do still have regular product updates that come out via our KB, our support article, but we're going to start doing it next month. We're looking at a couple new integrations. There's a new ticketing functionality that's going to be I don't want to be hyping it too much, but a game changer is really fair to say for, especially for co-managed stuff. We're going to talk about the ramifications of that. And there's a couple other things that are more to come that developers don't want me to talk about because in case they're late, they won't get in trouble. They're pretty smart. They do that all the time, but they don't want me to say it. But there's some cool stuff happening. And then we're going to also be sending the recording link after with any relevant link to stuff, namely the Academy and the community and stuff too. So with that being said, we have a little bit of time. Any other questions on anything, please let me know. I'm more than happy. Otherwise, I will adjourn us, a nice 15 minutes early. Safi, what do you
Yeah,
think?
give me a second to run through these questions real quick. I think we've picked everything. I think we've got everything. Actually, I've got 2 questions coming in. No, I think we're fine.
Yeah, and by the way, again, like obviously, as you can tell by my super professional demeanor, we keep these things pretty casual. So if you think of anything afterwards that didn't get addressed here or anything else, you can always just shoot us an email at support@cloudradial.com. Myself and a couple other people that are on the same consultation and support team, we kind of do a shared responsibility there. We'll be able to answer that. So please feel free. And this also applies.
I kind of want to answer Philip's question. He asked, are there any planned integrations with Continuum RMM? I mean, we really don't work with, or we're really not integrating with other RMM products at this time. And Ricky, you may want to address that and kind of explain to them how our agent works, because a lot of questions come up about the agent versus an RMM.
The agent stuff and the RMM stuff is always interesting. I think I've said this a bunch of times, but especially it's more true now, especially with what happened to Kaseya than ever before. So just generally speaking from a perspective, and forgive me, Philip, I know, I don't know if you already know this, if you're just looking for a brief answer, but I always ramble. The whole point of what we're trying to do as a whole within a client portal is just to give reporting, which obviously the RMM can do. So my like 5-second answer is like, no, we don't integrate with it. If you wanted to put the RMM stuff in here, you could always forward the reports that RMM can generate to the report archives, spin up a folder. These all have their own emails and that's it. But more so, I think when people ask that question, what they're really saying is like, hey, I have this data. It's there. The machine is spitting it out. Let me relay it over here. And that kind of defeats the purpose of what we're really going for. So again, this kind of ends up in this weird duality where it's like, well, we say that that's not what we want to do, but yet we have our own agent and we spit this information out here. So clearly that is what we want to do, right? We want to be able to show some of the stuff that's like RMM like, RMM light, but we're not. So what's the deal there? Again, what we're really trying to do as a whole with CloudRadial, not just with the agent or with the reports or with anything, is to derive a decision, to derive consultative opportunities, to derive action. So the challenge with us has always been, as a company that's not that big, right? We're not this huge conglomerate. The development resources to take various RMMs, Continuum, automate Datto stuff, right? And basically take them and make something actionable is really difficult because we're not after what we're looking at here, right? This is the easy part. Porting in information, we can do that in 15 seconds. The issue is trying to make that actionable through like the policy. So again, rather than spitting out all this stuff, going through the policies and being able to show like, hey, this is happening. Hey, this is happening. The challenge from a development standpoint is that basically every RMM somehow has figured out how to make the calls to the information. Does it have an SSD? Is it under warranty different? So again, developmentally, the challenge to take the RMM and process the information the same way to have it apply is just like insanity, which is really why we have our own agent in the first place. It's not like we enjoy getting people to download stuff, uh, but it's just easier logistically. And as it relates to the Kaseya thing, we've been extremely weary of RMMs in general, and CloudRadial is far more secure than a PSA and RMM in general because again, we're not writing back information, and we always hesitate because when we integrate with something that has such a wide spreading action like an RMM that is able to do things, we just introduce potential threat vectors that we're not quite ready to handle. So we've been kind of skittish to get into that in the first place. So we're kind of comfortable here for now, at least.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, and I don't know if we want to get into the security aspects because I think that Ricky, I mean, we really are not, we don't own the machines, and we're not doing anything with the machines. And Matt Fleming just asked, with everything taking place with Kaseya, are there any recommendations for making the portal more secure? One thing I wondered was in the Partner Office 365 tab and how it links to the client's Microsoft 365 tenant. Are there any steps we can take, to make this more secure, to make the portals more secure? And I mean, if you go in, you can look at our security, cloudradial.com/security. We have everything in Azure. We're using the highest level of security there. So we are very conscious of that. But
I think,
and you may want to elaborate on that some, Ricky.
It's an interesting and a really good point for a lot of people because again, obviously with anything that spits out information, there's always the cause for security. And again, if you look at the way that CloudRadial has evolved and built its even internal feature set stack, we've done it in such a way that we can always pull the plug without breaking stuff, if you know what I mean. So the fact that we pull in the users and stuff from the PSA from Office, and even in those cases, like the PSA, we, especially like with ConnectWise and stuff that we have literal permissions, we don't have write access back to it for basically anything. With the Office stuff in general, right? If you look at, for example, the partner script that you run to give us access if you're like a CSP and stuff, the script itself is basically read on everything too. I think there's one that allows people to write their own, like they can update their name and title and stuff. So even from the get-go, for what we pull in, CloudRadial is really just a massive repository of data that's being read anywhere and not really allowed to go back. So again, irrespective of Kaseya, we're just talking about security-wise, you could shut off CloudRadial and turn it back on and it would just pull in information again. So it's not generating anything of value. So even if it gets like what you would call a breach, right? People get in there, it's read-only information. They can't really do anything back up. Again, when it comes to the RMM stuff, agent and whatnot, the one thing, if you're like super security minded, that we recommend is the agent has an auto update, the agent that pulls in the functionality here, right? So that reads the stuff, because the way that this agent works is that once a day, it pulls in information. Again, it's not an RMM, it's read only, pulling in specific things. It sucks it in, it's used for the policies. There is I think I wrote an article on this. So let me see. Or at least I added an article to agent. I added a line specifically for how to disable the auto update, because we talked to some people and they said that like there's a potential for vulnerabilities with any kind of auto update because people can do stuff through there. So there's a switch setting for that. But other than that, there really isn't much else that we can secure down, because again, we're read only. We don't have much going for us as far as writing permissions. And I think, again, when it comes down to especially like PSA and office permissions and stuff, we try to keep it to a minimum from the very beginning. But if you see other things that you're not leveraging, a good example is like some people don't want to use like the ability to display quotes and invoices and stuff because they don't want their finances. So what they'll do is they'll just disable that in like a security role, and we just won't be able to pull it through. You chop it off your feature set, and that's it. But yeah, long-winded, I know, but again, it's like nothing is unhackable and stuff. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, the danger in something like Kaseya is that it has just a ton of information. It had execute capabilities of stuff, right? There is a lot of holes that were really bad and make a PSA and an RMM way more dangerous than a portal. Right?
All right, I think that's I think that's it, Ricky. I mean, I think you've covered everything really well. Does anybody else have any other questions? And if you do, you can always email us. You can email into support@cloudradial.com. You get actually a full team that can answer, questions there. And I will say, just kind of kudos to everybody that works with us. I mean, we document things very, very well in the knowledge base, which is what, Ricky, at support.cloudradial.com.
Yeah, that's what I was checking earlier.
Yeah, you can put a lot of these things, you can find your answers. I mean, that's usually my go-to place before I start bugging everybody internally. And so, just when you've got, some questions there, I mean, just take a look. And I always forget, I put it in the emails, but it's a great resource. And, Evan and Cam and Stephen have done a great job, and Ricky done a great job with documentation there. And so, and as we add new features, we always, put that information there as well. So
right.
Just make sure to check it out. And again, as far as the boot camps and jump starts, if you're interested, you can email me direct at Saffie, SAFFIE @cloudradial.com. I think the sales@cloudradial.com email also comes to me. We're running the boot camps once a month, and I think Kinley's getting ready to put up the August links if she hasn't, or schedule if she hasn't already. So if you want to get into that, just let me know. And then, I mean, I think we've kind of covered it. I feel like we haven't talked about, as Ricky said, feature updates and in a month or so. So I just want to make sure that that these resources are there, and we continue to improve them.
Yeah, I think it happens to the best of us. We're just shaking off some cobwebs and going like, okay, getting back on track. So again, we're going to try to be more consistent with showing you guys what we're doing in the background as far as updates, integrations, and stuff coming on. So we'll catch you back up on the August one.
Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting things coming down, and I think August product update is going to be really good. You're going to be surprised at a lot of things going on there. And a lot of great things happening with CloudRadial. So we're looking forward to telling you about it. So I'm gonna go ahead, Ricky.
No, I was gonna say sweet. That's pretty much it.
All right. So y'all have a wonderful day, and we'll be talking to you again next month.
Sweet. All right. Thanks, guys, and always hit us up if you need anything. But thank you for joining. Catch you later.